6 weeks in a coma. That's all it took for my brother to destroy what I'd built over 30 years. Or so he thought. The morning after the accident, a drunk driver ran a red light Frank had power of attorney activated and sold. Romano's Italian kitchen to a competitor for emergency medical funds. What Frank didn't know was that I'd spent the last 5 years quietly building a franchise empire. The restaurant he sold? It was just a test kitchen. The real business was in the contract sitting in my lawyer's safe. If you've ever had family betray you when you were most vulnerable, subscribe to hear how karma works in the restaurant business. Let me tell you how my brother's greed became my greatest business triumph. My name is Antonio Tony Romano, 52 years old, owner of what was once a single Italian restaurant in Providence, Rhode Island. I opened Romano's Italian Kitchen in 1993 with my wife Maria's life insurance money. She died of cancer the year before, leaving me with 2 young kids and her grandmother's recipe book. Make something beautiful with these, she'd whispered at the end. Feed people the way Nona fed us. For 25 years, I perfected those recipes. The sauce that simmered for 8 hours. The bread dough that rose 3 times. The tiramisu that made grown men cry. Romano's wasn't just a restaurant. It was a shrine to Maria's memory, fed by her grandmother's hands reaching through time that my brother Frank never understood. He was a contractor, saw everything in terms of lumber and profit margins. You're wasting your life in that kitchen, he'd say. Franchise it. Sell it. Do something smart for once. But Romano's wasn't about smart. It was about soldat still. Frank had a point about one thing. By 2018, people were begging me to open more locations. Food bloggers called us Rhode Island's best-kept secret. The Providence Journal ran a feature, The Last Real Italian Kitchen. Tour buses started stopping by. Lines formed around the block. It was time to grow, but on my terms. Instead of rushing into franchising, I spent 3 years planning. Hired consultants who specialized in restaurant chains. Studied every successful franchise from McDonald's to Olive Garden. Most importantly, I protected what mattered, the recipes, the name, the experience. I created separate LLCs for everything. Romano's Recipes LLC owned the intellectual property. Romano's Brand Management LLC owned the trademarks. Romano's Franchise Systems LLC would manage the franchise operations. The physical restaurant that stayed under the original Romano's Italian clean, separate, protected. Why all the complication? My lawyer David asked. Just seems like a lot of paperwork, Tony. I thought of Maria, of her grandmother's recipes. Because some things are worth protecting, I said, even from family. Frank knew I was planning something, but not the details. He'd drop by the restaurant, snoop around my office. Still playing with your franchise fantasy, he'd mock. You'll never pull the trigger. You're too sentimental. I let him think that. Better to underestimated than understood. By early 2023. I had everything ready. 23 franchise agreements signed, all in major East Coast cities. Each franchisee paid $200,000 upfront plus committed to 8% royalties. The $4.6 million in franchise fees sat in an escrow account, waiting for the launch date, May 1st, 2023. The flagship store, my original restaurant, would be the training center, the heart of the empire. March 5th, 10th, 2023, Thursday night. I was driving home from the restaurant after a 14-hour day. Stopped at a red light on a 12th Avenue, thinking about the Boston franchise location, when I saw headlights coming too fast in my rearview mirror. The drunk driver hit me at 60 miles per hour. They say I was technically dead for 3 minutes. The paramedics brought me back, but I slipped into a coma. Traumatic brain injury, internal bleeding, shattered ribs. The doctors told my family to prepare for the worst. If he wakes up, they said. Not when. If Frank arrived at the hospital within hours. As next of kin, with my kids living across the country, he took charge. The power of attorney I'd signed years ago, standard family protection, gave him control. The first thing he did was go through my restaurant office. He found bills, supplier contracts, employee schedules. What he didn't find were the franchise agreements locked in David's safe. The separate LLCs weren't mentioned in the restaurant's books. The $4.6 million in escrow didn't show on Romano's Italian kitchen's accounts. As far as Frank could tell, I owned a single restaurant, nothing more. While I lay unconscious, Frank made his move. Hospital bills were mounting, over $100,000. In the first week alone, my insurance had limits. The restaurant, Frank decided, had to go. But instead of keeping it running, instead of trusting that I'd recover, he saw an opportunity. Vincent Marcelli, owner of 3 mediocre Italian restaurants in Providence, had been trying to buy Romano's for years. I'd always refused. Now, with me in a coma, Frank called him. Tony's not going to make it, Frank told him. Even if he does, he'll never cook again. Make an offer. $125,000 cash. For a restaurant that netted $300,000 annually. For recipes that had taken decades to perfect. For a name that meant something in Providence, Frank took it. Signed his power of attorney on March 22nd, 1 week after the accident. Quick, clean, done. He told my daughter Sophia when she flew in. From Seattle, I had to, sweetheart. The medical bills. And honestly, would your dad want to wake up to debt? This way, he's free to recover without worry. Sophia, overwhelmed with grief, didn't question it. My son Michael, stationed in Germany, heard about it third hand. By then, it was done. I woke up on April 27th, 6 weeks of darkness ending with blinding hospital lights and a throat full of tubes. The first face I saw was my nurse, Patricia. "Welcome back, Mr. Romano," she said, tears in her eyes. "You gave?" U.S. quite a scare. Recovery was slow. First, learning to breathe on my own, then speaking, then moving. The brain injury affected my motor skills, but not my memory. I remembered everything, the recipes, the plans, the franchise agreements, and the accident. The headlights coming too fast. Frank visited daily, playing the devoted brother. "Take it easy, Tony. Everything's handled. Just focus on getting better." It was Sophia who finally told me almost casually. "At least you don't have to worry about the restaurant anymore. Uncle Frank took care of that while you were sleeping." My heart monitor spiked. Patricia rushed in. "Mr. Romano, you need to stay calm." But how could I? 30 years of work, Maria's legacy, sold while I was fighting for my life. I forced myself to breathe slowly. "Tell me," I whispered to Sophia. "Tell me everything." Frank had sold to Vincent for $125,000. The transfer was complete. New signs were already up. Marcelli's Italian Kitchen, a Providence tradition. Vincent kept my staff but changed the menu. Generic Italian-American food? The sauce came from cans now. The bread from a supplier? The sole ripped out and replaced. With profit margins. "I'm sorry, Dad," Sophia cried. "We didn't know what else to do. Uncle Frank said it was the only way to pay for your care." I squeezed her hand. "Not your fault, baby. Not your fault." That night alone, I called David from my hospital phone. My lawyer answered on the first ring. "Tony, I heard you were awake." "How are the franchises?" I interrupted. "Are they safe?" David's pause told me he understood. "Everything's secure. The agreements are solid. The escrow is untouched. Frank only sold the physical location, operating as Romano's Italian Kitchen Inc. He couldn't touch the other entities without." "Your signature?" "And the launch date? Still set for May 1st. That's in 4 days, Tony. The franchisees are trained. The locations are ready. They're just waiting for your go-ahead." I closed my eyes. Maria's recipes were safe. Her legacy would live. "We launch?" "As planned," I said. May 1st, 2023. While I was still in the hospital learning to walk again, 23 Romano's authentic Italian kitchens opened across the East Coast. Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, D.C., each one using Maria's grandmother's recipes. Each one trained to our standards. Each one paying royalties to Romano's franchise systems. LLC. The marketing campaign was brilliant. David had hired a PR firm with some of the franchise fees. The real Romanos expands. Authentic recipes from the original creator. Tony Romano brings true Italian to America. Social media exploded. Food bloggers who'd loved the original were invited to exclusive tastings. Every review glowed. Vincent. Marcelli called David, screaming about trademark infringement. David calmly explained that Vincent had bought Romano's Italian Kitchen, Inc., a Rhode Island corporation. The franchise operated under Romano's Authentic Italians LLC, a Delaware company. Different entities, different trademarks. All perfectly legal. Frank showed up at the hospital that afternoon, face purple with rage. "What did you do?" he shouted. Patricia moved to call security, but I waved her off. "I didn't do anything," I said calmly. "I was in a coma, remember? You're the one who did something. You sold a building. I kept a business." The truth unraveled quickly. Frank had taken a $25,000 commission from the sale. The rest went to hospital bills, he claimed, but records showed only $60,000 in payments. The other $40,000 in Frank's accounts. He'd seen an opportunity to profit from my accident, maybe even hoped I wouldn't wake up to question it. "You sold Mom's recipes," I said during his last visit. "You sold her memory for 30 pieces of silver. It's just food." Frank exploded. "Just a restaurant. I saved you from bankruptcy." "No," I corrected. "You saved yourself from watching me succeed." The franchise numbers were staggering. First month, $400,000 in combined revenue, $32,000 in royalties to me. By month 3, $1.2 million revenue, $96,000 royalties. The franchise fees from the escrow account pay for my medical bills 10 times over. By Christmas, Romano's Authentic would be in 40 cities. Vincent, meanwhile, was bleeding money. Without my recipes, without my systems, Marcelli's Italian Kitchen was just another mediocre restaurant. His own customers abandoned him for the new Romano's in downtown Providence. He offered to sell back for $500,000. I refused. Let him keep the building. I had something better. I was released from the hospital in June, still weak but determined. Moved into a small apartment near the Providence Romano's franchise. The franchisee, Giuseppe, was an old friend who'd begged me for years to let him open a location. "Tony," he embraced me tearfully. "Welcome home. Your kitchen is waiting." I couldn't work full days yet, but I could train. Every Romano's franchisee came to Providence for a week with me. I taught them not just recipes, but philosophy. This isn't fast food, I'd say, showing them how to test the sauce. This is slow food, soul food. Maria's food. My daughter Sophia quit her job in Seattle to run Romano's brand management. My son Michael, discharged from the Army, took over franchise operations. Family business, the right way. Frank we cut off completely. He tried to sue for a portion of the franchise profits, claiming he'd preserve the business by selling the original. The judge laughed him out of court. By fall, I was strong enough to visit each franchise location. 23 kitchens serving Maria's food, 23 shrines to her memory. In the Boston location, I found a widow crying over her tiramisu. "It tastes like my grandmother's," she said. "Like home." That's when I knew we'd won. 1 year after. The accident. March 15th, 2024. I stood outside the original Romano's location. Now Marcelli's watching through the window. Empty tables. Bored staff. Vincent himself at the register looking defeated. His 3 other restaurants had closed, unable to compete with our franchises. This last one was dying. David stood beside me. He's asking $50,000 now, just to get out from under the lease. "No," I said. "Let him fail on his own. That building has bad karma now." We walked to the new Providence Romano's 3 blocks away. Line out the door, full tables, the smell of real sauce drifting into the street. Inside, Giuseppe had hung a photo of Maria by the kitchen entrance. Every franchise had one. my wife watching over her recipes. She would be proud, Giuseppe said, seeing me look. 30 locations serving her food. That's immortality, Tony. Frank I hadn't seen since the hospital. I heard he'd moved to Florida, told people his brother had cheated him. That was fine. Let him tell his stories. I had better things to do than hate. Every morning, I woke up grateful. Grateful to be alive. Grateful the drunk driver hadn't killed. Grateful Frank's betrayal had forced me to see what really mattered. The drunk driver got 18 months in jail. I testified at his sentencing, not for vengeance, but for closure. You nearly killed me, I told him. But in a strange way, you also freed me, forced me to let go, to trust others, to build something bigger than myself. I forgive you. Make better. Choices. Frank wrote once, asking for forgiveness. I sent back a photo all 30 Romano's locations. No words needed. He tried to bury me in my business. Instead, he'd planted seeds. Every franchise that opened was proof that some things can't be killed by greed or betrayal. Vincent finally surrendered in summer 2024. Couldn't make rent. Couldn't compete. The building went up for auction. I let another restaurant take it. Romano's had moved beyond that corner in Providence. We were nationwide now, with plans for 100 locations by 2026, all because my brother thought he was selling a restaurant, when he was really just selling real estate. Today, Romano's authentic Italian kitchens has 47 locations across America. Each one uses Maria's grandmother's recipes, exactly. The sauce still simmers 8 hours. The bread still rises 3 times. The tiramisu still makes grown men cry. We turn down locations that won't maintain standards. This isn't about maximum growth. It's about maximum quality. I work part-time now. My body's still recovering from the accident. Sophia runs daily operations. Michael handles franchise development. They understand what Frank never did. Romano's isn't about money. It's about memory, family, tradition. It's about feeding people the way Maria's grandmother fed her village. With love and patience and pride. The original restaurant location. It's a yoga studio now. Sometimes I walk by, remember the early days. Maria pregnant with Sophia, stirring sauce while I prepped vegetables. Building something together, one meal at a time. Frank thought he destroyed that when he sold it. But you can't destroy love by selling the building it lived in. Love finds other homes. I understand Frank better now. He saw me unconscious, maybe dying in panic. The bills were real, the fear genuine. In his mind, selling the restaurant was saving me from bankruptcy. He couldn't see past the immediate crisis to the future I'd built. That's his tragedy, not that he betrayed me, but that he never understood what he was betraying. If he'd asked, I'd have shown him the franchise plans. If he'd waited, the launch would have covered everything. If he'd trusted, he'd be part of an empire now instead of alone in Florida telling stories about his ungrateful brother. But Frank always took the quick path, the easy money. It's why. He's a contractor and I'm a chef. We build different things. The Coma taught me something valuable. Control is an illusion. I couldn't control the drunk driver, couldn't control Frank's decision, couldn't control my own body for 6 weeks. But I could control what mattered, protecting Maria's recipes, building something that would outlast me, creating a business that transcended its building. My name as Tony Romano. A drunk driver put me in a coma for 6 weeks. My brother sold my restaurant while I was unconscious, thinking he was destroying my life's work. What he actually did was force me to launch the franchise empire I'd been secretly building. Today, 47 locations serve my late wife's family recipes. Next year, we'll reach 100. Frank sold a building for $125,000. The franchise rights he didn't know existed are now worth over $50 million. He saw immediate bills and grabbed quick cash. I saw a long-term legacy and protected it. The restaurant he sold was just a test kitchen. The real business was in the recipes, the brand, the system, all safely locked away where desperate brothers couldn't reach. Sometimes the worst moments create the best opportunities. My accident forced the franchise launch. Frank's betrayal freed me from a single location. What seemed like destruction became expansion. Maria always said her grandmother's food could heal anything. Turns out it could even heal betrayal. To those who've been betrayed while vulnerable, document everything, protect what matters, and remember that buildings aren't businesses. My brother sold my restaurant while I was in a coma, but he couldn't, so what he didn't understand existed. Now thousands eat Maria's food every day, and somewhere in Florida, Frank finally understands the difference between price and value. The drunk driver took 6 weeks of my life. Frank took my original restaurant, but Maria's recipes, those are eternal now, served with love in 47 locations and counting. That's the thing about family recipes. They're like family itself. The real ones survive everything, even the worst betrayals. Especially those.